Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Iceberg has been hit. President Biden is at this point going to lose to former President Trump, the four-time indicted former president who is testifying today in his civil fraud case for grossly inflating all of his real estate properties. A new New York Times Siena poll shows that Biden is losing significantly in 5 out of 6 key battleground states. And unless something remarkable happens, I do not see any way this is going to turn around. Let's take a look at these polls, which are pretty damn striking. Biden, as you could see there, let me zoom in for you. Biden is down 10 points in Nevada. Biden won in 2020. He's down by 10 points in Nevada, and in 2020, he won Nevada by 2 points. He is down in Arizona by 5 points to Donald Trump. In 2020, he won very, very narrowly Arizona by 0.4 points, so less than a point, very narrow. In Pennsylvania, key battleground state, Donald Trump is beating Biden by 4 points. In 2020, Biden won Pennsylvania by a little over 1 percentage point. In Georgia, which became critical to Biden's election, Trump is up 6 points. In 2020, Biden won Georgia by 0.3 percentage points, so less than a point. Michigan, this is a massive, massive iceberg for Joe Biden. He is down by 5 points in Michigan. Quite a bit of that might be due to heavy Muslim populations that are now turning against President Biden for his support of Israel's just carpet bombing / genocide of Gaza. That is, he's down by 5 points in Michigan. In 2020, he won Michigan by 3 points. And in Wisconsin, Biden is up. So that's the only of these 6 swing states. He's up by 2 points, which is basically a tie when given the, point differential. In 2020, Biden won Wisconsin by less than a point. So he's a little improved a little bit in Wisconsin. But the bottom line is Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Biden's down considerably. And Trump does not need to win all of those states to become president. He could honestly win maybe 3 out of 6, and with some other states, become president again. Then when you look, to me, this was a really key thing in this New York Times Siena poll. Trump right now has 22% support among Black voters, which obviously have for a long time, right or wrong, because I think the Democratic Party has done jack shit for Black voters and exploited and taken them for granted. Trump somehow is registering a 22% support among Black voters in those swing states. If that stands, Joe Biden is going to lose, and he's going to lose by a significant margin, given the fact that there's other icebergs hit for Joe Biden. When you look at this chart, Joe Biden, 2020, 34% of voters thought he was too old compared to 18% for Donald Trump. Now 71% think Biden is too old compared to 39% for Trump. Trump is only, I believe, 3 or 4 years younger. I don't think it's just about the age number. I think it's also about how they look and speak. I mean, Bernie Sanders is older than Joe Biden, but if it was polled, I would venture to think most people would think Biden is too old to be president compared to Bernie Sanders, who still speaks and seems relatively energized and, youthful, I guess you could say, for his age. So it's not just the number, how old they are. It's clearly Biden is looking tired, among other potential cognitive problems. Does not have the mental sharpness to be president. Biden in 2020, people thought 45% thought he didn't have the mental acuity or sharpness 62% now. Trump, 48% in 2020. Now, less people worry about that somehow. Because if you watch Donald Trump speak, it's not exactly, a great, secure feeling that he's mentally sharp. Then does not have the temperament to be president. I mean, this is stunning. Trump, somehow he's gone down. Less people worry compared to 2020 that he doesn't have the temperament to be president. Biden, it has gone up in terms of more people feeling he does not have the temperament. Then to me, in addition to the black voters, 22% of black voters who are supporting Trump in those 6 states, to me, this is the ball game here. Why Biden, if the election were held today, would lose and lose pretty convincingly. Among young voters, shocking, young voters are not going to support you if you abandon your promise on a minimum wage, abandon a public option, which was never enough, abandon $2,000 checks, do virtually nothing during a climate apocalypse. I could go on. Non-white voters under the age of 45. They supported Biden by 39 points in 2020. Now, non-white voters under 45, 6 points they support Biden. Non-white voters over 45, Biden, nearly 50% in 2020. Now, just 34%. White folks under 45. And when we say under 45, technically that's younger voters. Biden, +5 in 2020. That's turned around now. White voters under 45. Trump +8. White voters over 45. Basically the same for Trump. And then how Trump fared in Times polling against Joe Biden 4 years ago. Trump, it was Biden +2 against Trump at this time 4 years ago. Today, a Republican +5. A named alternative, Elizabeth Warren in 2019 or Kamala Harris now. Republican up 2 against Trump 4 years ago. Now, Republicans up 3. So even if it was Kamala Harris today, a Republican would still be beating Kamala Harris. This right here, I think, is very important, folks. To be clear, 4 years ago, an unnamed generic Democrat +3 against Donald Trump. Today, an unnamed generic Democrat +8. So if you just threw in an unnamed generic Democrat, they would beat Trump, presumably, by 8 points. And then we look at this. All voters today, who they support, Trump +5. If Harris voters supported Biden +2. I mean, that's within the margin of error, really. So it would basically be tied. Black voters, I mean, this is just unbelievable. Not really unbelievable, but pretty embarrassing and shameful if you're the Democratic Party. Whom they support today, black voters, less than 50%. In 2020, 78% supported Biden. Hispanic voters, Biden +8, 2020 +26. Young voters, I mean, this is the kryptonite. And I've been saying this for months. If you've been watching Status Coup, young voters would decide the 2024 election. Biden +1 compared to +23. I want to go back to this for a second. Unnamed generic Democrat. 4 years ago, Democrats +3. Today, Democrat +8. I'm not saying this because I'm not saying this as a rah-rah for Marianne Williamson. I'm also not saying I've made it clear what I think of RFK Jr. But there is it's not unnamed Democrats. There has been for a long time 2 Democrats primarying Joe Biden. Now there's 2, but Marianne Williamson and RFK were challenging Joe Biden for months. Marianne Williamson longer than RFK Jr. because she announced earlier. Whether you support her or not, that's not the point. The point is the media blacked out Marianne Williamson. She barely got any interviews. The interviews she did get were not with name brand big outlets. And when those name brand big outlets would cover Marianne Williamson, they would frame it as Biden doesn't have credible, serious challengers. This is how manufacturing consent works. Marianne Williamson, according to these polls, if she would have gotten a real fair shake in terms of coverage, I'm not saying the media would have to be rah-rah for Marianne Williamson, but if they would have at least covered her, interviewed her, pushed Biden that he should hold debates with Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. when he was running as a Democrat. Now he's obviously running as an independent. I'm pretty sure Marianne Williamson's poll numbers would have gone up, considering the poll numbers we have now. Young people would have gone to Marianne Williamson. If you want to play devil's advocate, you could have said some of them would have went to RFK Jr. I think most of them would have went to Marianne Williamson. I think a lot of those black voters who have become disenchanted with Joe Biden would have went to Marianne Williamson. Hispanic voters, possibly some of them have gone to Marianne Williamson. That doesn't mean Marianne Williamson would have taken the lead over Joe Biden. But I do believe if the media wasn't in the tank and corrupt and part of the cabal that buries any progressive type challenger, and I don't agree with Marianne Williamson on all issues, but on economics, I like her talk on a new Bill of Rights, Medicare for all, etc., new economic Bill of Rights. But by and away, Marianne Williamson would be competitive right now for the Democratic primary, considering people think Biden's too old. They're not happy with his economic performance. They're not happy with pretty much anything within what he's done. And by the way, Marianne Williamson, I'm not saying this is all black voters care about, but she is the only Democratic primary challenger in 2020 or now that is calling for reparations for black people. So I think it's important to realize now suddenly the media is saying, oh, maybe there needs to be Democratic primary challengers to Joe Biden. Oh, this tall, empty glass of milk, Dean Phillips, the Minnesota congressman, is now suddenly the media is covering him because he's declared that he's running against Biden. Well, Marianne Williamson's been in the race for over a year. RFK Jr., who I don't like, but he was in the race, and they wouldn't give him a fair shake either. There was no media criticism that Biden wouldn't hold debates, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's important to point that out. The media is complicit in this because according to these numbers, an unnamed generic Democrat right now would be beating Trump by 8 points. Well, we had a named Democrat. We had two for 6 months to a year, and the media buried them, just like they tried to bury Bernie in 2016. So, I mean, I could dissect these numbers further, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is this. Young people, when we say young people, let's just say, for argument's sakes, 18 to 35. Not that you're old, over 35, but for this discussion, young people, in large part, held their nose and voted for Joe Biden in 2020. I got a lot of crap for doing it myself, which I've explained the reasons. But the bottom line is, young people did that because they were told it's this or fascism. And they did it. But what did young people get? They were told by Joe Biden, build back better. They were told $15 minimum wage, public option, $2,000 checks, and drilling on public lands. They were told other things too. All of those things he went back on. Say what you want about Trump. He kept a lot of his promises to his base. Not all of them, but quite a lot of them. Biden unilaterally moonwalked away from a $15 minimum wage. I think he stopped talking about a public option the day he was elected. We know about the $2,000 checks. He's basically been continuing a lot of Trump's policies at the border. If you look into it, I've done interviews. He's been kind of trying to slowly privatize Medicare. Michael Leidy with the Sanders Institute, I've interviewed him about that. The climate inferno, the most Biden did, he didn't declare a climate emergency. He did a statement about enhancing or providing more cooling centers for elderly and the vulnerable. He's doubling the drilling on public lands. He approved the Willow Project in Alaska. We could go down the list. Then you see what's going on with Israel and Gaza. I think that matters in places like Michigan. Dearborn has one of the most heavily populated Muslim populations in America. Biden is, calling for a pause. All right, let's pause the slaughter of 10,000 innocent people. Let's pause the bombing of all these innocent people in Palestine or Gaza. Well, give it a day pause, and then you could resume. Come on. It's absurd. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I am not entirely pleased with everything Bernie Sanders is doing right now, but I would say I don't think he's going to. But if Bernie were to jump in, I think Bernie would beat Trump, because I don't think it's necessarily just that he's old. Bernie is older than Biden, but if you actually asked the masses of people, I think they would say they're more concerned about Biden's age, given how he speaks, how he looks. He's lethargic. A lot of his sentences don't make sense, and it's not a stutter, as we know. He didn't sound like this when he was vice president or senator. He just looks past his expiration date, which happens when you get old. That happens to most of us. Bernie, when he speaks clearly. He's still traveling quite a bit. I think Bernie right now, if he were the Democratic nominee, would beat Trump. I think Marianne Williamson would have a better shot than Biden. I mean, I could go down the list. I think Gavin Newsom, who's not my preferred choice, he's a corporatist, I think he would beat Trump. Dean Phillips, I don't think so. And then you look at the third-party candidates, Cornel West, RFK. Do I think they would beat Trump if they were running in the Democratic primary? Maybe. I don't know. But right now, I think you could name pretty much 10 to 15 people, Democrats, that would beat Trump. And Biden's not one of them. I also don't think Kamala Harris would beat Trump. This is not iceberg right ahead. This is iceberg hit. Titanic sinking. Rescue choppers not coming. We're either going to have Biden do the right thing, pull an LBJ and step down, cite whatever you want, health, family, crossing, the bridge to the younger generation, or his arrogance and hubris is going to give the White House back to Trump, who, short of, I think the most serious case against Trump is the classified documents case. If that trial begins before the election, which is not clear right now, I think Trump would be convicted. I think it's possible Trump would make a deal to avoid prison, because he would be facing some type of prison. But as of now, if it's Biden-Trump, the Democratic Party is the one emboldening significant authoritarian fascism in a second term for Donald Trump.